Welcome back, everyone, to Fintech Mavericks. I'm your host, Nicole Casperson.
I'm Drew Glover.
Today, we're joined by Emily Green, head of wealth management at Ellevest, a company that's been at the forefront of redefining what investing can and should look like when it centers women's financial realities. Emily joined Ellevest in 2017 when the platform had less than 40 million in assets under management and has played a core role in building it into the firm with more than 2 billion assets under management. She's been there since the early days, helping scale a startup that's long stood by their mission: get more money in the hands of women. Today, we're here to talk about what's next for Ellevest, the great wealth transfer, what this moment means for women, and what it takes to lead with clarity when everything is changing and chaotic. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we're just gonna first start with the big elephant in the room, which
Please.
is the headline. So Ellevest made a big transition with the announcement this year with its robo-advisory business transitioning to Betterment. Talk to us about what led to the decision and how you are thinking about this shift strategically.
Yes, as we record this, we're in the middle of this transition now. But we spent a lot of time thinking about what was best for our clients. That's our clients is always our North Star. And through that, we decided that Betterment was the best path forward for those clients and the entire digital business. And so now the business that I have run, the wealth management business, and then with financial planning, will be the focus of Ellevest. As we reflected on the current environment, and Ellevest was started a little over 10 years ago. And while, we've certainly had some progress and then some losses for women over that period of time, when we think about the wealth management industry in general, we look at that wealth management firms are looking to position themselves to attract and be representative of the growing client base of women, as we'll talk about within the Great Wealth Transfer. And so thinking about how they're aligning those needs, and we are really at the forefront of that and want to continue to be that. And so when you look at it, the majority of financial advisors are still white men over the age of 50. And the majority of the money run in this country, 98.9% of the money run in this country, is by white men. And so when we think about the problem in serving women, we think there's an amazing opportunity for us to be able to continue to shift that thinking going forward.
Yeah, no. And I guess the other big question is why Betterment? Like, what were the values or capabilities that made them the right partner for your digital first clients? I'm going to give a small backstory that I was there when Sally and Sarah Levy actually met for the first time, the CEO of Betterment, because I had asked them both to speak at a Fintech is Femme event back in 2022 or 2023, one of those years. And it felt really special. I was like, seeing them both meet
It's two
for the
badasses.
first
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and they were both about to speak, and honestly, we were in the green room, and then it was like the rest of the world disappeared. Those two were just like instant besties.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to. I was like, did I play a small role in this? Maybe. But anyways, back to
Love
your
that.
question.
Love that. It is. It's always a funny thing because you think about someone who used to be your competitors, and you start to think about who should, where that business should go. And but Betterment is the largest digital investment advisor in this country. It is over. I think it's over 50 billion now, over 900,000 customers, and they too are mission oriented. And to your point, led by a woman CEO, which to us is really important. As I quote that number of the 98.9% of money that's run by white men, having a woman at leadership is very, very important to us and to our clients. So in that sense, Betterment was the natural home for our digital clients. And the things that they've been able to scale on top of the automated investing that we offered, they have the things that our clients have been asking for, like joint accounts. The cash account options that have become really popular as high yield savings became popular over the past few years, like things like that they could offer those clients that we did not have at this point.
To shift gears into thinking a little bit more of the kind of new direction always sounds a little weird, but in a way, right? So Elvis has always been about making investing accessible to all women. So how are you kind of balancing that founding mission with the new focus on the high net worth wealth management clients?
Yeah. So we will continue to serve all women through financial planning within there. But as we think about more women than ever are building sizable amounts of wealth through careers, the inheritance, entrepreneurship, thinking about startups that they're growing. And so this is a group that's really seeking financial advisors and planning services. And so one of my favorite topics is the great wealth transfer, which we're in the midst of. And we think about how we're going to serve this group. And this has already been taking place. And so, there's a lot of different things get quoted in here, but it's, 84 to 129 trillion dollars passing in the next decades. And this is the largest intergenerational wealth transfer that has ever happened in history. Majority of that will be to women with the as the beneficiaries too. It's really, really important to think about that. That includes the millennials who get talked to a lot about in this. But first, the first women who get money, we have to remember in this transfer, is actually when their husbands die. It's actually the boomer women who get the money first. And when we think about this is going to be a really important part in the way that we play our next step in terms of our wealth management clients. And we've seen that over 80% of women have expressed a desire to invest with their values. And I always like to think that at Ellevest, we help women to meet the mission driven investing wherever they are on that, whether that's from the first step, which is working with a female advisor, to working with a mission aligned firm, to actually making impact investments with their money. We're poised to do that. And so I think that we'll continue to make change. It just may be in a slightly different way.
Hmm.
I'm curious as we think about investing with values first, and we also think about this great wealth transfer, knowing that someone might be getting $100,000, some might be getting 100 million, maybe a million, maybe 10, who knows? But obviously, the amount of money you get is very dependent on how you think about investing. Are you investing from an offensive standpoint, a defensive standpoint, and making the world better standpoint? So I'm curious, how are you thinking about just getting in the mind of these folks that are having wealth transferred to them? And how are you kind of building that persona and how you engage with them and build different strategies around building that relationship?
Great question. The tricky part is there's many personas within this. And so as I mentioned, there's the so men die before women. And so women on average live, 6 to 8 years longer within there. So there's women in their 80s who will be getting like taking over the money for the first time. That is a totally different persona of a person within there because they're getting the money. They've often not really been involved in these conversations. They may have met the financial advisor at dinner once, but and the majority of women actually have a negative surprise when they actually inherit the money. And so for them, it's creating that persona of really like making them feel comfortable. Like, let me help you look at this entire picture, making sure you have enough income. I always joke that like, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Every woman thinks she's going to like be sitting in her house eating cat food at the end of her life. Like, it doesn't matter if you have $50 million. Like, they all do. They all do. And it's just getting them to realize that that's not true, that like you're totally fine. And like that's what's happening right now with the markets. Like, take inheriting money, your spouse passing, very emotional time. And so a lot of it is just like, yes, we're going to invest with you, but a lot of it is actually just showing them the planning. Like, they don't really care, like, are you getting 10% returns? Not focusing on that, but like, how are we talking about showing you that you're going to be okay? That's very different than the mid 30s, 40-year-old millennial who may be inheriting. Very different point in their life. They're in the midst of their career. They started or starting a family, probably bought a house. There's a very different things that they're thinking about here. And they're really thinking about growing their wealth and their careers. And so for a lot of that, it's actually like, how do I help you do this in the way that spends the less amount of time of like your time within here because you have a million things going on in your life. And so I always like to think of it as like I have some clients who are like, can I talk to you like once a year? I'm like, twice would be nice, but like, please, within here. But really thinking about what that means to them and realizing that they actually have a lot of optionality is how I like to think about it. Like, it's interesting because I think how financial planning gets talked about is a lot of people think like I need to do A, then B, then C, then D, then E, then F. And if you're 35, that's not how it needs to work. And the thing is, like, when you're 35, you have so many levers that you still have to pull. And so it's how do I talk to someone, not about how I think the industry has, which is you need to make this amount for this many years and you're going to retire then, and this is your life plan. But here are all the options and levers that you have. So you may say, you may have the same situation as someone, but like, I want to work less. Okay, well, then you have to make more right now. Or spend less or buy a less house, or I'm going to work till I'm 70. So, and I want this, insane house, and just like the different ways that they can pull that. And I find that that is much deeper conversation with people, just understanding the choices that they have to make in life, and the path that you will be there on with them. And then there's people in between that path and those two personas within there. But it's, you have to sit and think about like, what makes each of those groups tick. And again, just because it's like inheritance and a wealth transfer, like there's so many people underneath that.
Essentially, the focus on this segment of your business is pretty necessary. You're dealing with a lot, right? Like you're dealing with this is a wide breadth of the type of
Yeah.
personas, like you're saying. And to your point, I think something that I think is cool is the part where Elvis really has this position where you could be exactly influencing this great wealth transfer of women, whether they're the millennial, and getting that
Yeah.
inheritance, or the 80-year-old woman getting that inheritance, and even teaching them about what they can invest in, including, right, uh, other women founded companies or women small
Yep.
businesses, or women, like how else can they use that inheritance exactly for impact, for good, for
Yep.
whatever that is. And I think that's a piece of like the story that isn't being seen, right?
Yeah.
Is look, a company had to make a decision to focus on a certain segment of its business. This happens. What is the good that can come out
Yeah.
of that? As if Elvis hasn't always been about that. Like
Yeah.
that's what's been so shocking to me is like, what are you talking about? This has always been the vision and the mission. So anyway, but that like to me is I imagine also a big piece of it is like what is the education process
Yeah.
around, but it sounds like wow, that zooming in needed to happen if we're going to make the most impact, because I need to start educating this massive inheritance
Yeah.
group into what that money can really be do in this world to really make an impact.
Yeah. And like, we can, there's so many things that apply to our wealth management business that we'll still be able to use for the broader audience, which I think is really important within there. And so, just because someone inherited money doesn't mean that they don't need to figure out how to buy a house. So, like, advice around that, things like that. It doesn't matter if you have $30,000 or $30 million. Like, no one taught you how to do that, how to like figure out to like, I need to get insurance and what is the process? And like, I've done this for a living. And the first time I bought a house, I was like, whoa, like, what is going on here? Like, who are these people? Like, how do I
Same. What a
find
mess.
them? Like, what is this? And like,
Who
it's
are all
like,
these
yeah,
people?
like someone mailed me a guide. Why do I have to pay them all? And so like helping people go through that, it doesn't matter what wealth level you're at. And so I think one of the exciting things is like we can take a lot of the advice that we're going to be giving to this group and still use it for the broader audience and like how they're thinking about things. And whether that, again, it could be like charitable giving. Doesn't matter if you're giving $10 or $10,000, like we can still give you the same guidance of like how to think about it.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry, I want to get really tactical for a second because I think that's really something that's really fascinating is I think it's very easy for us to talk about great money's been transferred. How do we turn that money into impact? How do we turn that money into more money? I think it's very easy to talk about the time before that money's transferred, but there's like just very similar to buying a house. Like I'm thinking about buying a house, I bought a house, the
Yeah.
chaos of actually getting the
Complete.
house.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of chaos in the transfer actually someone passes away,
Yeah.
money is transferred to you and the process in between that. And we think about trust, we think about
Yeah.
wills, we think about estate planning. And I'm curious as you are leaning and building into wealth, I think it's a huge opportunity to also kind of reimagine what a wealth manager is. And I'm curious how you guys are thinking about the reimagination of what it's supposed to be
Yeah.
in this big transfer of wealth.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I like to actually think about that. We are focused on women, families, and the next generation because of that, because there's so many things that are interconnected. This is going on. And so, how are we helping? And not it's, oftentimes when we say we focus on women, like people assume it has to be like a single woman or a divorced woman, but like, no, like women also lead their households within there. And so, thinking about what that means in that process and how you're showing, because it's actually very anxiety driven for people. And so, like, helping them find the resources in order to do that. And like, I even have a very close friend who's going through this process right now. Her dad is older, he's sick. She already knows how much she has in her trust, but like that was a fight to get to know that part within here, which
Mm.
like I kept arguing with her. I'm like, do you want him to like pass and then be like, I don't know, do I have $500,000? Do I have $5 million? Like, this is something you need to talk about. And it's been something that you can feel like drags on someone's life, which like sounds crazy because it's like you're getting money, but it causes all this anxiety. It causes tension with your family. And so, especially if you're like married and you're trying to make decisions in your life, and say you're like just had a kid and you're deciding if you're a stay-at-home mom, and you're like, well, I don't know, do I have money coming to me? Do I not? And so it actually makes your decision making process quite difficult. And so a lot of it is like helping people to with that psychology of it, and like how are you going to work through all of that and thinking about that. But then a lot of it is like, how do I, one of the things I've been thinking about is how do I take like other things off your plate so you can focus on these things, because there's like all these different types of things in life. And like traditional wealth management, we think about like investing, and now we think about financial planning, but for like a long time it was just investing. So we added the financial planning. There's so many other things that you can think about as well. And like people that I've talked about, like partnerships with like healthcare companies and like types of things. I have this obsession with this AI tool that's for mothers that people keep joking I must like get $1 for. I don't, but because I keep telling everyone about it, because it like helps you plan your life. Like my clients like
What is
all
it?
have it. It's called ohai.ai.
Oh my gosh. I love
Okay.
Obsessed
Sheila.
with it. Obsessed. Like
All right.
literally everyone I know has it at this point. But like,
Oh,
how can I help you like do things like that, that you can take the mental burden of some things off of your life so we can focus on something that needs to get done right now, because you cannot push that off. And the problem is you have 15 things on your list. I promise you it's the thing that's going to get pushed off your list. So we got to push all those other things off so like it can be brought to one, two, three within there.
I love it. I think there's a ripple effect too that happens, or almost like so I was my started my career as a B2B finance reporter, and before I transitioned into fintech as femme, I was a fintech reporter at Investment News, and often writing about more of the technology that's used to help wealth
Yeah.
managers manage the ultra wealthy.
Yeah.
And but what I would see is that ripple effect where when we could unlock what was happening at the higher level, there there is a chance for it to start to democratize, right? And we've
Yeah.
kind of already seen that happen. But that's something that I see as, as Drew said, you're like completely reimagining what a wealth manager actually does and looks like, because you have to, because it's for women and no one created what that looks like
Yeah.
for women except for you guys. And so to be able to actually like have that and focus on how do we get that wealth manager picture to actually work and be right is I think important. And and to your point, you're saying how you're planning on still having the content or financial planning available as resources for
Yeah.
the larger Ellevest community, because I mean it's like I think the press releases used to say like 3 million, right? Like between social and your newsletter and everything, which I love the newsletter, by the way. Um, and
Sally
so,
really wrote those on the weekend.
oh, I believe it. I believe it because you know how I know, because I write my newsletter, every
Yeah.
single one of them. 104 newsletters a year.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
That's what she did on
It,
Sundays.
yeah, I do mine about 3 hours before they're meant to be published.
Yeah.
Is
Some
kind of
people need the
my
pressure.
I thrive under the pressure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's that education, being able to share what you're learning from this focus group, and then that, like I said, that ripple effect. I do find even with like my summits, my content, if I make the content high level, right, then others follow, right? Like students then
Yes.
want to come because they're
Yes.
learning this higher
100%.
level. They want that access. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm curious, like, how does that, how does, I mean, I know you're focusing on the wealth management business, but I guess how does like the content, have you thought about how that strategy
Yeah.
kind of happens
Yeah.
or
Well, I'll just
evolves?
I'd love to build on that before you answer that, Emily, but also just like diving in a little bit more to what it takes to get like your ideal client, how many touches it takes, because as we know, it's like for Nicole at Fintech FM, even for me at Fiat Growth, like that's four dinners that we've
Yeah.
done together. That is three summits that we've done. It's four in-person meetings at
Yeah.
a conference, and then it's us doing a weekly newsletter. But we know that after 14 of those touches, like typically that'll turn into an opportunity, and we're constantly trying to turn that into an equation. And I'm curious how you think about it from a growth standpoint.
Yeah. So I think about this all the time. I'm probably the only person in wealth management who thinks about this. I go to like wealth management conferences, and I once went to a conference that was about generating referrals, and they made us all tell our referral percentages, and mine was 5 times what they said was good. And they were like, maybe you should just teach this. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I'm here.
Hey.
But the it's interesting because especially for women, women find that they need to understand everything before making a financial decision. And so, what really is important in this is trust. And I find that men can find a financial advisor that they trust much more quickly and just say, like, you know what, got it. We're going to go golfing. I made a decision, done. Um, Women have a harder time with that. But what's really interesting, I think, for us as at Ellevest as a brand is we've built a trusted brand. And so we actually have a lot of people who come into us through just our marketing. And so we have a client who is multiples of tens of millions of dollars who literally wrote into our website. And it sounds like crazy because like who thinks like she has a family office, like who thinks like a family office is writing into someone's website? They do within that. And that is like the content that we push, and being, speaking on things, podcasts, all these different types of things. And to your point, um I actually think 4 to 5 touches is low for a business like ours. I like to think actually it's more like 9 to 12 because it's a much bigger decision that someone has to make within here. Again, it's really hard to put the actual numbers in it because you can't see like did someone listen to that or this
High
type of.
intent.
Mhm.
But when you get to that, it's a lot of touches that people have had to see within there. And so, like a lot of times, like we hosted a dinner on Tuesday in Park City with one of our partners, True Wealth Venture Fund. They're a woman-focused venture fund. We bring together groups of women, and if someone converts like tomorrow after that dinner, it's not going to be because she heard of us for the first time at that dinner. It's going to be because she read many of our articles. She's been following Sally. She follows Ellevest for this many years. She heard us on a podcast. She saw someone speak. And then she came to the dinner and said, wow, this is really it. I need to be a part of this. And she had that feeling. I always talk about this feeling with women that they get from us. And like you get the experience and you meet someone, and it doesn't matter if it's like a phone call or such, but like our team are so incredible that like you've seen all of the marketing, and then you actually get to it and you're like, yes, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and like how can I not be a part of this? And like that's the important part of like the end of it, is giving them that like I need to be here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm curious from like a referral standpoint, because I assume like referrals have to be so important
Mm-hmm.
for the work that you're doing. Are referrals kind of, hey, I made a referral, therefore they will become a client, or do you kind of consider that a touch? Do you consider that a high qualified lead that'll convert quickly, or is that considered a touch in your marketing funnel?
I consider it a high quality lead, like a high intent lead within there, because one, you have to
Cool.
think about. So there's two different types of leads, and now we're getting like deep into how I think about marketing. But there's the people who like reach out to our site or like referred. If you have one of those, like you made an effort, and not so like either you told your friend you were looking for a financial advisor and they said, hey, you should meet Ellevest, or you went to our site and typed in. Those are high intent people versus people like maybe we reached out to, or I just met at some random event or those types of things. Like those are people who are going to mean many more touch points. And you have to like build drips on and do all those things. And, I build drips for everyone, but like thinking about like how that works for that they need to see much more to trust you than this person who came in already with an intent to make a decision.
That's That's it. I'm sorry.
All
Mostly.
right. I'm
Sorry.
off my growth train.
No, no,
I'm
no.
off
You're
my
good.
growth train. I appreciate you going
I know.
deep with me, Emily.
No, no, I love that. Actually, well, I think it's important because, we're in a time where fintech companies and and then don't even get me started on wealth management, but like they're learning about this new version of marketing that
Yeah.
and growth, which is the content and community crossover, which
Yeah.
frankly you Elevest has been doing
Yeah.
for quite some time. I would maybe say
Yeah.
pioneering, right, with that
Yeah.
founder led marketing, that founder market fit
Yeah.
that Drew and I always say and are so like obsessed with. And but it's still like considered new, right? But Sally did
Oh,
it forever,
100%.
right? It's
Yeah.
still considered. I'm still even the work that I'm doing. I'm trying to get the entrepreneurs in my community. Like I'm like, how many examples do I have to show
Yeah.
you of how important it is to leverage your story, right? Like leverage your founder story,
Yeah.
leverage the women, even yours, right, Emily? Like we're gonna get more into your, how you got into Ellevest, but
Yeah.
like leveraging these very personal and intimate stories to actually create, right, the fact that someone can go through your website or be obsessed with a newsletter and convert that. And I think we're in like those early innings still, where we're
Oh,
starting
for
to
sure.
finally see folks be more into it. But it is, I don't know. I'm glad to be in the space at this time because I think we're at like that takeoff point that's about to happen, kind of like the way a TikTok creator took off when the pandemic happened. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it
No,
feels like that.
it's interesting because I think that the financial industry in general, I worked in traditional finance, I worked at a big bank, and I think that you're almost taught like not to be an individual a lot of the time and not to be authentic. And when you talk about social media and articles and videos and all these different mediums, actually being authentic is going to be the thing that actually gets someone to come to you. Like they're not coming to you because you told the same story that like someone else told. They're coming to you because of your personal story and like that you said things. And like that's where Sally is so brilliant is she will literally say, she stands on stage and is like, yeah, I've been married twice. I've been that, like she just says it how it is. And that's where I think people really have resonated with Ellevest is the authenticity of it. And it's not just like someone in marketing made this post and then all 100 people posted the same thing in the same way with nothing about themselves, within there. And like that was something I had to learn within that. That was like, okay, like I worked at a big bank and I thought, like, don't be yourself. And then Sally is unapologetically herself, just to a big degree within there. And,
Mhm.
so it's something you have to like unlearn in traditional finance.
Yeah, no, it's true, and it's something that I frankly like. I feel like, I remember the first time I wrote about it in my book. Like the first time I met Sally, and it was like the height of the pandemic, 2020. I'm a reporter, and for the first time, I'm interviewing someone in the wealth management space who just has like, the most courage to even
Mm-hmm.
talk about what's really going on for women, right? And
Yep.
I hadn't heard anyone speak this way ever.
Yep.
And and that was like, and I couldn't, and then I just couldn't get enough, right? I was like, "Oh, this people are talking like this." I was like, "I
Yeah.
want more, I want more, I want more." And so, I think that's something that's important to remember too in this kind of like in the Ellevest new era, if you will, that, she Sally and Elvis really opened this door for that, right? For
Yeah.
I do feel like I don't know if I would be here without that
Yeah.
influence, and her kind of doing that to me as a young reporter
Yeah.
in my 20s at the time, all those years ago, and I imagine the ripple effect that, like I said, of that, of what has happened with that. I will say you have been with Ellevest since 2017, as I
Yeah.
said, which why does 2017 sound like it's actually not that far away? But I guess
Yeah.
it is. Anyway,
7, 8 years ago. Yeah.
yeah.
Lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, almost a real blink. It's going to be a decade. Yay. What was it like to take the leap, like you shared, from traditional bank to fintech startup with someone like Sally?
It was terrifying. I was definitely someone who I worked at a big bank. I thought I would always kind of work at a big bank. It was like part of my persona, it was like who I was. I liked going to Park Avenue every day and like, you know, throwing on my heels in front of the building and running inside. Um, and it was definitely like one of these things I grappled with so much making that decision. I feel like I called every single person I knew, definitely analysis paralysis within it. And it was scary to think about. And, you think about like it was a big career risk. It was a big financial risk. Like I made a lot of money and I was going to Ellevest at the time had under $40 million of assets. Like the AUM of the whole company was smaller than one of my banking clients within there, which is like absurd to think about within that, like coming from a big bank. And I remember when I quit, everyone thought it was crazy. And that was actually the hardest part of it, I think, is like all these people I had worked with for 7 years at a big bank, like were kind of like, what are you doing? And you start to second guess yourself. And, I was 30 years old. And you think a lot of these people within here, and a lot of like senior people at a bank, like calling me up to their office, being like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to ruin your career and blah, 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 blah. And it
Yeah.
takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage to like, then they offer you money and they offer you all the things. And like, it takes a lot to like sit there and say like, no, I'm going to try to do this. Looking back, I'm actually surprised I like got through that week and still left with it. Like I'm amazed. And I think if it wasn't for like certain people who were like, Emily, just go, like you can always
Mhm.
go back.
Right.
But it was at the end of the day, like, it was so, when I first started, I joked to this Sally. She literally like handed me a MacBook, which I like don't know how to use because I worked at a bank. Like I only know to use like a PC in this. And she like hired me to be an advisor and was like, all right, Emily, like go. I'm like, okay, fine. And I'm like, great. Who are we talking to? Who's our target client? What's our fee schedule? What's our offering? Blah, blah. And she's like, no, we don't like have anything. And I always start to, I'm like, you lied to me. Like you lied. And she's like, well, you wouldn't have joined if I told you the truth. And I'm like, no, 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 no. But it was like this whole thing. And I had to like figure out, I'm like, I get to like make decisions. I get to do like, that was wild to me. And I'm like, oh, I get to just like figure it out for myself. And I don't have to go up to like 17 people to like say yes or no here. Like it was a wild, wild
Right.
time.
You're like, "You mean there's no red tape and just
Yeah.
all chaos
Yeah.
all the time?" Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I find I resonate with that as, my second year as a proper entrepreneur, and I'm like, I feel like last year I did not CEO well at all. I was very bad at CEOing. I didn't really know, and I was just I yeah. And this year I'm finally like, I can delegate tasks to
I
people.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
can tell people to do stuff and
And they will
then
do them.
they'll
Yeah.
do it. And,
Yeah.
like, and then they might even do a little more than
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and
Just to
so
impress you. Yeah.
right. Well, it just feels like you do feel like you have to do everything yourself, but I also think those early stages are special, right? Because
Yeah.
you are just like learning to figure it out, and you have a big thing I've learned is just like you have what other choice do you have but action,
Yeah.
right? Like just go, right? Like
Yeah.
there is no let me like wait and see, let me just
Yeah.
figure it out. No, you just go and
Yeah.
move and let let your momentum, you know what I mean, Drew? It's like
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're also just forced to become an operator, and I feel like everyone at the beginning of their career is they probably don't know what that word means, like to
Correct.
truly like
Yeah.
operate. But when you're inspired, you can make decisions, and you're forced to like build infrastructure. You are forced to become an operator. And so, Emily, I'm curious, like leaving banking, entering that, where all of a sudden you come in, you were lied to, in the
Yes.
most positive
I
way,
was.
but
Yes.
you were straight up lied to, and you're forced to become an operator and frankly like
Yeah.
build an entire like
wow.
Yeah.
investment infrastructure. Like what was that journey like the things that you felt comfortable with, you felt uncomfortable with? Like I'm sure you were forced to become things you never thought you'd become, but I'm just curious
Yeah.
what that looked like from your perspective.
I mean, I worked at a big bank. I was allowed to make like zero decisions in my life. Like we
Yeah, of
literally had a
course.
morning meeting every day at 8 a.m. I'm not even joking. Like you got to the office at 7:30, you went to a morning meeting at 8 a.m. and they like told you what to say all day. I'm like, I didn't even have to think. Like I was paid a lot of money to not think. But it was like this. I mean, I'll just tell you here. Like I literally on day two Googled like how to make a client experience. And it's like downloaded like a spreadsheet which I printed out and like because I like to think by like actual writing, not typing. And I still have it where I
Love it.
like and I printed out like many different iterations and I had to write it down. And it's like, huh, when people become clients, we should send them flowers because that will make them feel good, like all these things. And it is so funny looking back like 8 years later, and you're like, the things that we actually still do. And people like who start now, they're like, why do we do this? I'm like, because on the second day of work, like that's what I decided. But it was like such a wild experience. And there were so many things where like I was definitely someone who's afraid to make a decision. I think if you interviewed Sally today, she'd be like, Emily likes making decisions too much, within here. But and I'm good with making a bold decision, but like there were a lot of things where like you'd sit in one week, you'd say like this is what we're doing, and then three people would call on Monday asking for something else, and you'd be like, well, that's out the door, like that's not what people want, and you're like, rewrite it again. And there was just like so much iteration, which was definitely stressful at the time, but you look back and you're like, it was like so fun to be like, I always call it like our wild wild west days, and it was kind of like, what do we do? And you had to learn so much so quickly. And you think about it, and there's decisions I made now that I'm like, that definitely could have like failed the company, and like they very much worked, within that. But like there's bold decisions that you have to make, and it's scary at the time. And like you start it, and then you're like, other people's jobs depended on it, and all these things where like you work at a bank, like no one else is dependent on like what you do really within there, unless you're Jamie Dimon, no one else is like dependent on that. And it's like a huge learning curve to realize that like what you do actually like affects not only the clients, but like all these people who work for you.
Yeah. I know we're wrapping things up here, but I just have one more quick one. I always liken wealth management to like hospitality industry, because there are some
Yeah.
clients you have that you literally talk to twice a
Yeah.
year, but they're parking hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah.
with you. But it's also on you to like build this like relationship with them, even when you don't get the opportunity to chat with them all the
Yeah.
time sometimes. So I'm just curious, you touched on sending flowers when you get a new client, but I'm curious, what are some of those like surprise and delight moments that you guys have woven into the wealth management process that keeps people really excited and just, happy to be a client?
Yeah, we actually make everyone read Unreasonable Hospitality. You were spot on, like
It's
that
on my
book with
desk.
this.
It's on my desk.
It's over there.
So good.
The
Yeah.
Such a good book. Anyone who like deals with people should be reading that. But um it is really, you need to find things that are unique within here. So it's interesting. So like every holiday season, we send these beautiful boxes, and they're beautifully designed. They have like the Ellevest logo on them. They're black and sleek, and we send them to clients. And we actually use a company who finds women entrepreneurs in developing countries and like hand sews a cashmere blanket, or makes these beautiful like ceramic coasters, or we did these like silk eye masks last year, like all these things, and our clients like love it. It doesn't matter if you've gotten it for 7 years, our clients still every year are like, I love whatever it is within here. And each of them have the story of the woman who made it within it, which gives that to that beginning where we were talking about like that feeling within here. You're like, wow, this is meaningful. Like you didn't just order something from Pottery Barn for me, within here. You didn't just like send me a bottle of wine. Like there's thought to this. There's meaning behind this. Like, and it really matters to people when you're experiencing that within here. And so like little things like that, like again, as soon as someone becomes a client, we send them flowers with a lovely note. It's really interesting. Like this is a very personal thing to share, but like one of my clients had a miscarriage a few years ago, and I sent her like this whole thing and this whole like gift package and all this stuff. And she was like, my husband said to me, she's like, what other financial advisory firm would like ever do that, within here? And like, didn't just like send me some like random thing, but like put thought around it and all these types of things. And there's like all these little things in people's lives, and like the celebrations and the bad things and all this, like you're retired, don't just like send them a bottle of wine. Like what are some meaningful things to someone? Like, oh, you like to garden, let me send you something that's like meaningful within here. It doesn't take that long to do, but like that someone didn't just like go on the same site and order the same thing, and they like thought about you. And like I think that our clients, like I don't care if you're a woman or a man, like you like to think that like that someone actually thought about you if they're managing your millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love
Oh my
that.
gosh. I love that. And it's something even with Fintech is Femme that we really try to do, right? Like we host our big summit. I have to send you an invitation. And like and we try to do things really outside of like your typical Fintech scope, because we're
Yep.
not a typical Fintech conference.
Yep.
And so kind of like, it's like Sally inspired me or something.
Yeah.
Kind
Back
of
to the
like,
beginning.
I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, back to 2020
Yeah.
when I first met
Yeah.
her. But yeah, it's like how do if my audience is largely women working in fintech, how do am I gifting them like vitamins or
Yeah.
healthcare or like things that are going to really resonate with
Yeah.
them? How am I getting them like massages or spot, like just
Yep.
things that, instead of socks and pens, right? Like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
something a little, the surprise of
Keychains. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
notebook. Yeah, like
Yeah.
one of my teammates was like, "Notebooks?" And I was like, "No,"
Yeah.
right?
No
Like,
more notebooks. Like, I think
I don't
honestly,
need
the
a
notebook I have
notebook.
is from some conference I went to, like with something on it. Yeah.
Right,
But
what my audience will love is like, a custom T-shirt or like exactly, or
yeah.
everything is woman owned, and
Yes,
they're gonna
exactly.
see that, and they're gonna, and those women owned companies are happy to like gift that to us so
Yeah.
that we can create the cycle of more women funneling business to
Yeah.
each other. So I'm on your track. I'm following your lead. Um, all right, so I know we're wrapping up here, so I'm going to throw a couple of rapid fire questions your way, Emily.
Please.
So just like a quick first thing that comes to mind moment for these. All right, so what are traditional players still getting wrong about how to serve women today?
So they still like host these events. It's sort of like they have these events for people that it's like women want to have like let's have Sheryl Sandberg talk about work life balance, but then like let's have Condoleezza Rice talk to the men like within here. Like, what is this? Like, why is every woman's event about like work life balance? Within here, and it's so interesting. And then they just it sounds very simple. They don't have enough women advisors. Like they don't have enough women to talk to women. Like it sounds like this is ridiculous. And then they'll invite the young woman, but she never speaks. Like how many people who come to us are like, I went to XYZ or ABC. And like, yeah, they invited a woman to the room, but she didn't say one word. And I'm like, at least like, I don't care if she was a junior person. Like you prepped for this meeting for sure. Like give her something to say. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, you can't invite, you didn't get the checkbox because she just like came
I
within
appeared.
here. It's just it is amazing that they're like we invited one, like
Oh,
within
good.
here. Yeah, we got one.
We got.
Check, check. It's a she, and she's here.
I,
Like I
I'm
promise.
I am dead. Okay, what's
Hmm.
the most surprising thing you've learned about building a business that is centered around women?
So I'll focus it on investing. It's really interesting because a lot of my clients were men when I worked at bank, but actually women tend to have a much steadier hand in like times like this when the market's going around a lot. And it's always so like I remember when US when Brexit happened or when Trump won the first time, and I was like, I have to run to work because like the markets are tanking, and I literally woke up and like threw on clothes and like got on the subway and went to the bank. And it's so funny because like the first time that happened at Ellevest, I was like calling everyone and everyone was like, it's fine, like it'll be fine. And like, yeah, I know, but like, oh, you think it will too? Oh, okay, like you think long term within here. You're not like, oh my God, what's going to happen in a month? Like you too believe in long-term investing within here. It was like an incredible thing to figure out.
I know. I love when the grown-ups are in the room.
Yeah.
That's typically what happens when I host all women things and with Drew. All right. So what is one leadership lesson you've learned the hard way?
Many things, many things, but it was really interesting. I went from being a peer to some people to their manager, and that was a hard lesson for me for sure. And years later, there are things that I let a lot of those people who were my peers at the time do whatever they wanted as I kind of went on, because I was like, whatever, they know things, they're as senior as me, they weren't. And there was a lot of things that I think that they would have been better because if I told them, the company would be better off if I told them. But I just felt, and it was just me being uncomfortable. Let's be real. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, it was just like I didn't want to have that conversation, and you have to do tough things, and I wish I did.
That's fair. All right. Last question. What advice would you give your younger self in that moment back at that breakfast table with Sally when she said, when she may or may have not lied to you and said, come on, join, quit your job? What would you have told yourself before you said yes?
That it is okay to take risks, and it's not going to be like the decision you make that turns this into like one career path or another. Like things are going to happen that you have out of your control, and like things will fall into place or they won't fall into place. But I was so focused on, I was 30, like if I make the wrong decision, like my life is over.
Mhm.
Even if it didn't work out, it wouldn't have been over. Like let's be real within that. And I was so nervous about that. And it's just like sometimes you just got to take a bet, and that's who I've become now. But like you just need to take a bet and move forward, and you need to be 100% in on it, because if you are not, if you're still thinking I should have done something in the past, that is when it's going to go wrong.
100%.
Amen.
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 Well said, Emily. And to quote Sally on the Fintech FM stage all these years ago, make big calls on big bets. Something that I've learned from her and our community has learned. So I'm so glad that it worked out well for you and for Ellevest. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation with so much honesty, so much care. These are the kind of stories that really, move the needle on the future of our industry. So thank you. And the Ellevest voice and all that good stuff, it matters. So appreciate you being a part of the show.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
All right. Woohoo!